All right, the Sixers drop an overtime thriller last night. Well, I don't know if I'd call it a thriller, but I know all the Sixers haters are going to be out today in full force. Eagles offseason continues. We're going to talk about that. And the World Baseball Classic Finals are tonight. So we got lots to talk about today. Trending in the AM starts in 30 seconds.
Holding gets around in front. Joel Embiid intercepted.
And Philadelphia has it.
And a very good morning, everybody, and welcome to Trending in the AM right here on DSM Media. We're live, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, you know the drill. Like, share, retweet, follow on all social media platforms. But make sure you do me that favor, head over to the DSM Media YouTube page, hit that like button, that subscribe button, and it's the best place to drop your comments, thoughts on today's topics. We're talking Sixers, Eagles, World Baseball Classic, as we try to cheer on our team USA, USA, USA. Nothing better than when you go to like a wrestling event and Hulk Hogan comes out and everybody just starts chanting USA, USA. I hope to hear some USA chants today. I am your host, Phil Stifle at Beard and Knowledge. We've got Dylan Davis sitting in here next to me. Good morning, Dylan. It's been a minute.
Yeah, man. What's going on? The Sixers suck again, so I'm excited.
I know. Like I was so like, look, I would never root for the Sixers to lose a game, especially to break a losing streak. But I know how much you absolutely hate the haters that come out after one loss. So I'm almost glad today's the day you're on after last game because you're the voice of reason. But before you go, so we're going to do Sixers to start. Anybody watching, we're going to get to the Eagles because I know Dylan hasn't talked Eagles in a while, and we're going to talk World Baseball Classic. But Dylan, let's get started with the Sixers here.
I will say, dude, I'm proud of Sixers Twitter. I'm happy to be a part of the fan base last night because they drop a game, they don't get their 9 straight win, double overtime, offense was sloppy, James Harden struggled, Joel Embiid fouls out, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not sure that I saw one negative or overreacting tweet. I saw people coming together, bounce back. Let's get another win streak going. People are actually positive about this.
Hang on a second here. Let's see. It was a scheduled loss. I've heard I've heard a couple. I'm trying to find them. One of my posts on Twitter, a bunch of people came out and said some negativity last night.
Good thing I don't follow those people.
You are not as ingrained into Twitter like me, where I'm just like bored and have no life and just on there 97% of my life.
Sure.
There were some people that were saying that this team still. It was probably because I don't know if you caught anything of yesterday's show, Dylan, or the clip I posted yesterday. I put out. I think this is where all the negativity came from because it started to blow up last night a second time. I put out a clip from yesterday's show where I said this Sixers team would beat the Jimmy Butler Sixers team. No problem, no questions out, no hesitation. And, of course, after last night's game, everyone kept saying, no way, Jimmy Butler greater than, James Harden and that team. Whatever. I think that's where the negativity on my timeline came from, people reacting to that post of mine. So maybe that's what – maybe they weren't really negative. They just didn't like my – it wasn't even like I was bashing the Butler team. Right. Everybody knows I got my Butler jersey still hanging there. You know what I mean? It's just that this team is better. And I think that's where the negativity came from.
They are, and it's so funny and right on cue for those certain fans, whoever they are, to wait until a loss comes to react to that video. Now, I know you posted it yesterday.
They weren't reacting during the day on it. They were reacting after the loss.
Yes.
You know?
And I'm sure if the Sixers would have won last night but lose their next game, they'd be reacting in 48 hours to that post. Right. So that's what's funny about it, man. But no, I did see your video. You're correct.
I felt like I was saying something that was a bold-faced, like crazy, like statement. But then after I posted it, I was like, why am I so concerned? Like it's just a clear fact.
Do you know what's ironic about it too? People hold on, they latch on to that Jimmy team, right? Because and don't get me wrong, up until this point, they were the best team surrounding Joel Embiid. They had the best chance to win a championship. But what does everybody continue to say? Why does everyone stay negative about the Sixers team up until what? The second round. I need to see them get past the second round. When did Jimmy's team get bounced from the playoffs? The second round. Like, they didn't accomplish anything greater than what you're hoping for this year. So why are they latched on to that team?
That was Ben Simmons' fault. That if those people will say it was Jimmy Butler or it was Ben Simmons or it was Brett Brown, that's why they did. It wasn't Jimmy Butler's fault. You know what I mean? So that's where they'll go with that conversation. But I don't care about that team because that's the old team.
Correct.
This team. What I was trying to get at yesterday, and I think especially it's a good conversation to have after a loss too, is that every team in the NBA every year is completely different. This team is different than last year's team, the Jimmy Butler year's team, everything. And this team is special. Even though we lost last night, we played absolutely, without a shadow of doubt, one of the worst games I've seen all year, shooting-wise, offensively. You know, defense wasn't bad, but I don't know how much of it was defense and bad shooting from the Bulls as well. And we still were able to drag that out to double overtime. And this has been a brutal schedule. You know, how many road games in a row? You come home for one. Doc Rivers said, you know, as he said after the other game, just home for whoever does laundry to do their own laundry, and then right back on the road. And we are going right back on the road for 4 or 5 more games. This stretch is brutal. And I hate the term scheduled loss. You know, I hate it when Doc Rivers used it before. But you got to understand, these guys have got to be just straight exhausted at this point.
No, 100%. And when I'm sitting here trying, like, defending it, it's not like I'm not happy about it. It's not a good loss, right? The Bulls 15 games behind the 76ers. They come in at home, 8.5, 9-point favorites. That's a game you should have won, right?
Yeah.
The bottom line is exactly what you said. They played their worst offensive game of the season. James Harden played his worst game as a 76er, even with all the hamstring issues yet last year and the age coming into question and his lack of shooting in the fourth quarter in the playoffs. Last night was his worst game, and now it comes out after the game that he's got some foot soreness and he was hopping around in the locker room, and hopefully that's not something we have to worry about going forward. But to your point, you have all that bottled up into one, and they still lose by a bucket in double overtime. And it's not like the Bulls are the Charlotte Hornets without LaMelo Ball, right? They're not a good team, but they're not a bottom feeder of the Eastern Conference, right? They have Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan.
They're going to make the playoffs, the Bulls. I mean, in the play-in series, but they're pretty much going to make the playoffs. They are a good team. They're a team that the Sixers were before the process, you know? One of those teams that's always fighting for the last playoff spot, never going to make noise in the playoffs. But let's get to James Harden, because obviously, yes, worst game as a Sixer last night. But I almost feel like I don't want to call it his worst game, because obviously there's something going on there. Obviously, the game before, they gave Harden and Tucker that load management type rest game. They gave Tucker another night off last night, but it definitely seems like maybe James Harden has more than just load maintenance issues at this point. Yeah. So maybe again, I'm not trying to crush Doc Rivers here. I'm not, because I've said it. He's having his best season as a coach of the Sixers, maybe since the Boston Celtics days as a head coach. But maybe he made a slight, tactical error by suiting James. Obviously, James Harden's banged up. Obviously, James Harden is not 100%. You've got 11 games left to the playoffs. What is a home game in between 2 4-game road trips? How important is that you have to get James Harden out there? Should you have not considered? Because if you gave him last night off, that would have been a game, a day off, a game, another. That would have been like 5 days off in a row for James Harden. Right. And that right there is critical towards getting him to a point where he's healthy.
Correct. I just the problem is I don't know how much stock to put into this injury, right? Because to be honest, you didn't hear anything about it before the poor night. Like, it comes out after that, oh, he's been dealing with this. We didn't know that. Like you called it the other night, it was load maintenance. It was load management, right? The problem I had last night specifically on a game-to-game basis is whether it was James Harden or Doc Rivers, how he was used down the stretch really upset me in the moment last night. And here's what I mean by this. Whether he is injured and he's hobbled or whether he was semi-disinterested or frustrated with himself for the way he was playing and shooting last night, basically the entire fourth quarter, Phil, he played off the ball. And Tyrese Maxey was running the offense last night. And not only that, James Harden he would walk to the corner and he would wave Embiid off. If Embiid called him over, he would come get the ball, pass it right back to Maxey, and go in the corner. My problem is you have the league leader in assists who's not shooting well last night. Mm-hmm. So instead of putting him off the ball in the corner as either a decoy or a guy who has to catch and shoot late in the shot clock, why don't we put the ball in his hands? And if he's not shooting well, allow him to do the one thing he does better than anybody else on the floor, and that is create and play make for his teammates. Yeah. So I'm watching him off ball. There's no Joel Embiid pick and roll in the entire fourth quarter. They ran it one time and it was a kickball. So maybe it is the injury. Maybe he was frustrated with himself. But if he is actually injured, yes, that is on the training staff and on the coaching staff as to why you're forcing him or why you guys came together to play last night.
You brought up the thing I noticed. It's the first game, and I can't remember how many games that I remember this happening. And that there was literally from the fourth quarter through both overtimes, a dozen times where the Sixers had the ball 40 feet from the basket with 4 seconds left in the shot clock. Oh. Because they're just all when James Harden isn't interested, when he's got that disinterested attitude, and I'm not calling, I'm calling him out, but I'm not calling him out. I'm not trying to criticize him for the season he's had, just last night specifically. But when you're in that situation and you've got a guy that is hobbled, that doesn't have that burst to the hoop, why are you letting him have the ball at 4 seconds left in the shot clock at the top of the, 30 feet from the basket? And it happened. It was so frequently happening. My wife, who does not watch basketball, but sits in the room while the basketball game's on, she noticed it, and she commented on it. She's like, what is that play? Why has he got the ball with 4 seconds left at the half point, at the half court line? Yeah. And it happened that frequently. That was a problem. And I don't know if that's James Harden. I don't know if that's Doc Rivers. I lean towards the side that that's Doc Rivers. And I know you can't bench James Harden. Just like back in the day, Brett Brown couldn't bench Ben Simmons. But I don't understand why coaches aren't more willing to bench their stars when they're A, hurt, or B, clearly having their worst game. Like, no offense, I'm not saying you got to bench James Harden last night, but he led the team in minutes played. He's obviously hurt. He was having his worst game.
That's the problem.
47 minutes.
Yeah. That's the problem right there, Phil. Like you said, it's not necessarily benching in. If he was just not shooting well or whatever, I'm probably not benching.
Jalen McDaniels had 9 minutes. Jalen McDaniels had 9 minutes, and George Niang had 12 last night. Shake Milton had 10. Milton had the worst guy plus minus last night on the floor for the Sixers was James Harden. He was the only starter in the negative, and he was worse than anybody on the bench. So I'm not saying you bench him for the whole game, but he doesn't need to play 47 minutes.
But that's why it rubs me the wrong way when the comments are made afterwards about this injury. Because if he is injured and he's been dealing with it, Doc, why the F did you just play him 47 minutes in a double overtime? That's the part that doesn't make sense to me. It's disconnected somewhere along the line. If he's hurt and he's hobbling around the locker room after the game, what the hell did you have him out there playing that many minutes in this game or playing at all?
Well, I mean, some of it, if you asked that exact same thing to Doc Rivers would say, well, everybody's hobbled and banged up at this point of the season. He's
and that's a bullshit answer.
It is, but that's the answer you would get. But it's true, too. I mean, James Harden's obviously, at this point in his career, never not going to be banged up in Game 70 of a season. Right. He's a 35-year-old guy that drives to the basket and takes a lot of hard fouls. He is going to be banged up.
But is he banged up to the point where it forces him to shoot 1 for 10 from the field? Because if that's the case, my man needs a couple nights off until the playoffs. Yeah, it
was 2 of 14. It was even worse.
Yeah, so
it was pathetic. I mean, he was extremely bad last night. Another thing from last night's game that I want to address, and it's something that it doesn't happen often, but it's happened twice recently, and it's when Joel Embiid gets into foul trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And last night he gets into foul. It was like 3-4 minutes left in the fourth quarter when he picked up 2 fouls in a row to get to 5 fouls, and then he has to play so passive, so passive aggressively defensive, and his defensive presence is so important. And he did have a really big block. I think it was in the fourth quarter after he picked up his 5th foul. I think DeRozan went under the basket. And he was able to safely block. He made a non-over aggressive block. Sometimes Joel Embiid's over-aggressive nature puts himself in bad situations, but he doesn't have to be, and that block proved it. Would you almost prefer, Dylan, a Joel Embiid, when he gets that fifth foul, I know it's a close game. Just continue to play balls to the wall and just go all out. If you pick up your sixth foul, that's fine. Because then you play passively for the rest of the fourth quarter, both overtimes till you fouled out. And then 10, 15 minutes of game action later, now you're throwing in a super cold Paul Reed into a really tough situation.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't even.
I don't even know if my question came out right, but
No. I get what you're saying.
Playing once he it was 2 or 3 games ago on the road. He picked up a fifth foul late in the game, and they ended up winning and whatnot. But I don't know, something about the way he plays once he gets
because you're delaying the inevitable. You pick up that fifth foul, and you're either, if you pick up a sixth, you're off the floor, or you're playing scared to get your sixth. So you're not your full self on the floor. It's not even just Joel Embiid. It's when everybody picks up their second to last foul. I was watching the March Madness tournament last week. A kid for Pittsburgh, their best player, dude, picked up 4 fouls, probably with like 11 minutes left in the game, right? And they're losing by 8, 10, 9, right? Points down the stretch. And the coach, he's just sitting on the bench, and the coach brings him back in for like in the last like 2.5 minutes. They're still down 8. And it's very similar. It's like, dude, what's the point? He's already on the bench either, and you need him for that stretch down almost 10. I just let him go out there. If he picks it up, he's already on the bench right now. Let him go out there. Same thing here, right? Like, I get it. If he picks up his third foul or his fourth foul early on in the third quarter, hey, Joel, relax. If there's 3 minutes left in a very close game, I'm probably rolling the dice and allowing him to play his game. If he picks up that foul, he's got to come to the bench where he's got 1 foot off the floor already because he cannot play as aggressive as he wants.
Now, obviously you saw it, and I think the broadcast hinted on it last night too, just how much different the offense looks once in overtime. Joel Embiid fouls out. Would you have gone with Paul Reed? I'm a Paul Reed. I'm becoming a Paul Reed fan, but I was kind of thinking in the moment, a double overtime game against a team where they don't have. I mean, Nikolai Vucevic. He's a great. I love Vucevic's game. I remember him when he came into the draft Sixers, but it's not like you need a dominating big man to guard him. Tobias Harris could guard him, if need be. Would you have gone George Niang for the offensive purposes in that? Because when Paul Reed came off the bench, I'm like, this can either be great or this is going to be awful. And it turned out to be awful. He made some big mistakes, some big fouls, whatever. And then there's obviously no help on offense there. He got blocked from behind, on that play. I'm like, maybe George Niang should have been that option there.
Yeah, no, I probably agree with you. And I wonder if PJ Tucker was healthy to play last night if Doc goes small ball there. Now, again, PJ's not that much of a difference offensively than Paul Reed is outside from the corner. So, yeah, I mean, I think Niang probably would have been a play. You could even question a guy like Jalen McDaniels. Can he what happened to his run? And that's where Doc confuses me, man. I don't understand how
conversation before.
I don't understand how the kid plays 20 plus minutes, scores 20 plus points one night, and then 3 games later he can't see the floor really in double overtime game. Now he did miss like 2 games ago, so maybe Doc's easing him back in. I'm not sure. But yeah, I probably would have went small ball in that situation because you needed a basket more so than anything down the stretch. Both teams barely shot 42%. So I would have said, I'll bring out the liability defensively. If they make a shot, they make a shot. I need to make a shot. And obviously they didn't. I think the biggest thing when you have Embiid in foul trouble, and to the broadcaster's point about how different the offense looks, it gets exemplified. It gets magnified 100,000 times more when James Harden has a bad night as well. Yeah. Because normally that situation, and I love Tyrese Maxey, right? And Tyrese Maxey made a couple big baskets last night. Tyrese Maxey also airballed 2 threes, shot a rocket off the backboard down the stretch. The ball's probably in James Harden's hands down the stretch if he's having a better night.
Yeah, I mean, I think last night, I almost don't even want to talk about last night.
I know.
Specifically, because I know it's not worth getting over,
Oh, no, it's such an outlier.
But see, the thing is, I think last night's game is the part that upsets me the most is, whether people joke that it was a scheduled loss or whatnot, you could tell injuries, tiredness, whatever it may be. But the team as a whole just wasn't. I mean, outside D'Anthony Melton and a little bit of Tyrese Maxey, the team just wasn't. They weren't there. They were taking a day off to an extent. So in my mind, it's a meaningless game against the Bulls. You're fighting for, I don't know if you care about that 1 seed or that 2 seed or that 3 seed. You got to get these guys rest. The management of the games played down the stretch last night was a prime opportunity to rest Joel, to rest James Harden, to rest Tobias Harris. If you're going to lose the game, go all out and lose the game, in grand
That's a good
fashion
point.
and just run a G League. Where's Mac McClung when you need him? You know what I mean? Just anything. Like, now you have to rest Joel Embiid at some point. Last night was an opportunity. Now you're going to have to rest him against a good team when you're battling for recognition and a spot in the playoffs. So I don't know. Last night wasn't the night. And James Harden. Last night was the night to do it. Now you have to do it on this road trip.
No, for sure. And I agree with your point as well. Like, if I'm going to lose a game, if this is a scheduled loss, now, obviously, just sitting PJ, they didn't count this as that kind of game, right? But, yeah, I'm probably sitting all 3 of them or whatever the case may be, and I'll take my L, I'll take it on the chin, and I'll come back, and now they can all play this game. Whereas you're going to sit PJ 1 game, you're going to sit James 1 game, you're going to sit Joel 1 game, and you're going to be at least one key piece shorthanded in every game instead of just taking the one on the chin and bouncing back and having a better shot to win this road game.
Schedule, where the travel days are, where the days off are. And it's one thing to give Joel a day off after a back-to-back, but it's another thing to plan him where he can have 4 or 5 days off in a row to really recover that body. Same thing with James Harden. And last night was that moment. And I think I've looked at the schedule nonstop. There's not many more opportunities for 4 days off in a row. And last night was one of them. And I don't know. It was probably, I don't know if this played into it, but yeah, the 40th anniversary last night. They could have clinched the playoff spot officially on their
finally back at home
instead of going on the road for 4 days and doing it. So all the things checked. You didn't want to do it last night, but I don't care about, no offense to the home crowd. Like, when people get upset, when people are load management, when they spend $200 to go see a basketball game, that's a risk you take.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's part of it. What do you want? To see the best game when you go to a game, or do you want an NBA title?
Exactly.
And last night was an opportunity to help the team towards that NBA title.
No, I agree with you. And I think we've had this conversation on this show about load management, about that conversation before. But yeah, no, I'm with you. And I know I'm harping on it, and I'm not like mad at James Harden for his performance last night, and I'm not really mad at Doc Rivers, but it bothered, like, we're having this long conversation about should he have had the night off and how poorly he played. And then he makes that conversation afterwards about his injury. Why was he on the floor? I can't get over, and I feel like nobody's really talking about it. Like,
real quick here, because I do want to move on to other conversations. But how serious would it be? Like, this team is we said it at the opening of the show, the best team Joel Embiid has had around him. But if James Harden gets hurt and misses a significant amount of time, this team is nowhere near as good. I mean, the importance of James Harden and Joel Embiid together healthy. I mean, like, last night I'm watching that game, like, he's struggling. Something's wrong. The comments come out after the game that he's hurt. And I'm like, damn. Like, what would happen to this team if James Harden had to miss the first round of the playoffs? Well, I mean, it literally scares the shit out of me.
No, because, Phil, you can make the argument that he's now the glue on the floor for this team, because he's shown how many different hats he can wear and how electric he can be at times, whether he needs to score 20 points in the fourth quarter against Milwaukee and hit threes from the logo, whether he needs to have 20 assists, whether he needs to do this, whether he needs a triple-double. He can do everything for this team on the floor, and you take that away, and that's a great point, because the announcers mentioned how different this offense looks without Joel, and obviously that's the focal point. He is the MVP. He is the 34.5 points per game guy. But how different it looks when James isn't in command either. So, yeah, no, it would absolutely destroy any hopes we have.
Joel Embiid had another 37 and 18 or something like that. I mean, but it was almost like an ineffective 37 and 16 last night, if that makes sense. Because
I can tell you that none of it came down the stretch.
It looked different with James Harden not being effective versus an effective Joel Embiid. A lot of Joel Embiid's points, what was it, the third quarter? He had like 15 or 17? Yeah. So, yeah, none of it was down the stretch. Very little of it was in overtime. So, yeah, it was definitely a struggle. Real quick, I don't know if you caught it last night. I do want to end the Sixers conversation with this. I kind of thought it was pretty awesome during the Doc Rivers interview with Ala and Kate Scott. Not Doc Rivers, sorry, Dr. J interview when he was in the broadcast booth with them in the third
Nah,
quarter?
I missed it.
You didn't catch that?
Mm-mm.
Oh my God. So Dr. J spent about 10 minutes of airtime, probably about 5 minutes of game time in the booth with Kate Scott and Allah. And Allah, like Dr. J is literally Allah's idol, I think. And like really is.
Okay.
Like it sounded like he was crying. Like, first off, you're the Sixers announcer for how many years? How have you not met Dr. J yet?
Yeah.
And it felt like it was the first time. And he was literally geeking like a little schoolgirl meeting like the Backstreet Boys for the first time. And literally you could hear tears coming down his eyes as he told Dr. J about this time he was at a basketball camp when he was 12 years old, and Dr. J showed up and like picked him out of the crowd to show him how to do a drill, and it like influenced him how to become a basketball player and make basketball his life. If you haven't seen it, anybody watching this, go back and watch it. It was in the third quarter. It was one of the most genuinely like positive things you're going to see in a bad Sixers game. Like it was so like Dylan, is there a guy? I mean, you've been lucky. You've interviewed Mark Zumoff on your show before. We've both met and interviewed a lot of big names before. Mm-hmm. Is there somebody that you would like get to meet in person and interview that you would geek out so much that you would almost become, I don't want to say he was being unprofessional, but it definitely wasn't about basketball anymore. It was about life in that interview. I don't know who the answer is for me, but yeah. I mean, somebody's got to be like that to you. Somebody that's influenced you so much in life.
That's a tough question, man. Clearly, Allah found his guy.
I mean, no lie. Like you got to go back. Like I can hear tears rolling down his cheeks as he's saying, "Thank you for everything you did for my life." When you met me, he's like, "I don't know if you remember in 1982, you hosted this basketball camp at this stadium, and there were 2,000 kids, and like Dr. J's going to remember a basketball camp." With
I was going to say Dr. J's like, no, I don't.
Yeah, Dr. J's like, I remember running drills like that at all my camps. That was his response. He's like, "Will you pick me out of the crowd that one day?"
Poor Allah's like, that Tuesday, March 5th.
Tuesday, March 14th, 1982. You picked me. Do you remember that?
Oh, you remember what I look like?
Yeah, it was a pretty fun.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I want you to think about that, Dylan. Who would you geek out so much about meeting and having like 15 minutes with?
So that's what I was going to ask you about that question. Is it geeking out, or is it because like Allah has that personal touch? Allah had that face-to-face conversation and help or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had that personal.
Yeah, like for me, it would just be like an athlete or or somebody that I watched the whole like growing up. So it is tough. I don't know, man. My all-time favorite football player is Peyton Manning, so maybe Peyton.
Yeah, wait, like say you got selected as a random fan contest to be on the Peyton Manning Monday Night Football broadcast. You know what I mean, for 15 minutes.
The Manning cast,
the Manning cast. Like, and you're supposed to go in there as DSM and rep, and you'd be like, "Oh, I'm sitting here with Peyton Manning right now." Like, would that be your moment? Like, to
probably.
me,
and I would just talk shit to his brother the whole time too. So you good.
He'd be like, "Look, I still got 2 Super Bowl rings, and your Eagles don't."
Yeah.
That might be what that conversation goes like. Right there. Anyway, all right, let's wrap up Sixers talk there for a little bit. We got them. What, today's Wednesday?
Tuesday.
Yeah. Today's Tuesday. So Wednesday's the next game. So we'll get back into that. Another Bulls game on Wednesday night in Chicago. Start of a 4-game road trip. So we'll get back into that. So I want to switch the conversation. More Eagles offseason talk. We've been talking about the Eagles offseason pretty much every day on this show, and it won't stop because that's just what football is. It's a 24/7 business. It never stops. Obviously, yesterday's news. Yesterday morning, Zach Pascal goes to Arizona. Justin Evans, a backup depth safety. Dylan, I haven't had you on the show in a while. First and foremost, generally speaking, this Eagles offseason has been a roller coaster of a ride in turnover and retention, both. What are your gut feelings so far overall?
I think somehow it's gone better than expected. Because like there's no
yourself?
What?
Are you questioning? Are you asking me a question? Or are you
No, so it's so odd because of all the overreaction that was just pouring out of our fan base 12 seconds into the legal tampering period and free agency and all that stuff. And it's like, and then you have the Darius Slayton news that breaks. But to me, it's, if you would have told me a week ago that the Eagle or whatever at the beginning of the tampering period, that the Eagles were keeping Slay and James Bradbury. That in itself is a win. Now I know you go back and you lose Miles, who was just 1,000-yard rusher, and you lose your left guard or right guard in Isaac Sayamalu. You lose your linebackers, and now obviously CGJ loses, and we can get into that conversation in a little bit if you'd like. But
that man needs to keep his damn mouth shut.
Yeah. But it's fine. Like, they're still, like, you know what I mean? Like, the fact that you were able to keep those two cornerstones as your corners is the biggest thing to me. And you have Nakobe Dean stepping in for TJ Edwards. Okay, you lose Kaiser White. You lose Isaac Sayamalu. I'm not too worried on the offensive line. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to undervalue Isaac Sayamalu. I think he's been fantastic.
Am I crazy? Like, I really, truly believe losing Isaac Sayamalu and Miles Sanders on offense is a bigger deal than losing Javon Hargrave on defense.
Oh, like, probably.
Because Isaac Sayamalu is one of the best right guards in football, only 29. You know, Miles Sanders, you said he's 1,300 yards and 11 touchdowns. You don't just replace that with Rashad Penny and Kenneth Gainwell.
Right.
It doesn't magically – running backs just don't magically get 1,300 yards.
Yeah.
So, you know, I feel they're really big losses, but we can recover from those losses.
100%. I think that's the biggest thing where – and I think the fan base has kind of realized that after we were able to retain Slay and obviously already re-signed Bradbury. Like, that was the biggest key. It doesn't sound like they're done at safety either. Obviously, you mentioned the safety depth move, but it sounds like they could be bringing in a starter at that position, which would be huge. Listen, you lost CJ Gardner-Johnson. You also lost Marcus Epps. Like, you lost both. So, obviously, I know you had the whole Reed blanket chip stands and all right, maybe he's replacing Epps. You got two more shoes to fill. Or you got another pair of shoes to fill, man. So, Howie's offseason is definitely not done yet. If we've learned anything over the last 2 years, he signs starters in August sometimes. The draft is coming up. They have 2 first-round picks. So, I'm excited. I would just say I think it's kind of turned out a little bit better than expected because of who they were able to keep on defense.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we get to, so we got Justin Evans, another injury-prone former second-round pick that,
right.
You know, he's there for depth, just like Greedy
Williams.
By the
way, Greedy Williams is an interesting pickup, by the way.
Yeah, it is. But again, it's not like he's a guy that's proven himself in the league yet. He came out
I agree.
But he didn't prove himself yet.
No, I agree. But as a depth move where we do see injuries occur all the time in our secondary, it could definitely come into play.
I mean, I explained it as this. Greedy Williams is basically so the 4 or 5 plays a game that Darius Slay gets banged up, Zach McPherson's not the one going out there. If Avonte Maddox misses 2 games like he does every year or more, Greedy Williams steps in, not Zach McPherson. So no offense to Zach McPherson. I got crushed when I crushed Zach McPherson. I got crushed for it, saying that he's one of the best special teams player on the Eagles. And I responded with, well, our special teams was like 30th in the league. So I don't think being the best on the worst unit in the league makes you a good football player.
Not to mention, I love our fans, man. I really do. But it's like, I wasn't talking about special teams, bud. I was talking about slot
starting cornerback or a slot cornerback, not a guy that's going to make a tackle on kick return. You know, I don't get it. Everybody wanted Michael Clay gone. He gets retained. Everyone crushes it. So I say we need to improve a guy that only plays on special teams. And we're like, oh, we can't improve on him because he's a really good special teams player. Well, you're the 30th ranked special teams.
It's funny, man. It's like Kayvon Wallace has made plays on special teams. Do you want Kayvon Wallace starting at safety for you this year?
I mean, now our starting safeties are Kayvon Wallace.
A major problem, by the way.
That's a major problem. The Justin Evans thing. I think they said he's missed like 2.5 years in his 4-year career so far. So who knows what happens there? They are going to bring somebody else in. I do want to jump in on the Chauncey Gardner-Johnson conversation a little bit more with you. First and foremost, before we talk about what he said yesterday, I want to get your thoughts on how this whole thing played out. Because how I see it, I was seeing it like this, and then you hear more and more reports over the last 24 hours. This is how I see this played out. The Eagles, Howie Roseman went to Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, said, here's a 3-year, $35 million, not the 24. There's a $35 million deal. He was the first person Howie contacted as soon as he could. Chauncey's like, no, I want more. Howie says, go find more. Chauncey takes too long, so Howie pivots, goes to Darius Slay and James Bradbury, and like, all right, let's work it out and run back the cornerback room. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson comes back to Howie and says, shit, can I get that contract now? And he's like, sorry, that money's gone. I got 3 years, $24 million for you now, and that's all left, and it's all going to be backloaded guaranteed. Chauncey Gardner, as I said yesterday, off the screen, flips him the bird and says, I'll go to Detroit because they have a better roster than the Eagles Super Bowl roster.
Yeah.
So before we talk about that stupid thing there, do you think that's how, because some people think it just played out that Howie was undercutting Chauncey the entire time. I don't think so. I think Howie offered better than the $24 million at first, and then didn't have that flexibility after Chauncey took too long.
Well, I think it would be stupid to assume that Howie undermined or was trying to take money away from CJ Gardner-Johnson from the beginning. When you see the relationship, when he's hugging Howie on the sideline during the postseason run, and he's damn near in tears in the locker room with Sirianni, and the dude clearly at one point or another wanted to be in Philadelphia. Whatever dumbass comments he made once he left, that's another conversation we get into along with Javon Hargrave. However, no, I don't think he was under. I don't think that was the case. I agree with your point on him, and it's been reported, right? Like Howie did offer him a multi-year contract at the beginning of the tampering period. What I'll say is, I'll preface what I'm going to say by this. I know our fan base, any fans out there, love to think and hope and forget that it's a business and think that all guys should take a team-friendly deal to come back and make the roster better. And I think everybody should go out and buy into themselves and risk and have faith in themselves to get as much money as they can throughout their career. 100% on board with that. Mm-hmm. However, I'm not trying to question the man's character. He's coming off as an idiot. You look bad, dude. If you turn down 3 years, 25 to 35 million, because I'm going to bet on myself, and you walk away at the end with 1 for 8, you look dumb.
Not even 8 guaranteed. It was 6.5 guaranteed.
Yeah. And then you want to come out on social media, and you've been a nut on social media the entire time, messing, quote tweeting this, taking pictures down, putting them back up, deleting bios, all that different stuff, playing games. And now you want to come out and you want to have some things to say about your previous organization and how great your new one is. You look dumb. Sorry, bro. And then he wants to take to social media because fans are reacting. Y'all sure switch up quick. You switched up quick. What the hell are you talking about?
Look, I'm going to say this first and foremost. If he really believes what he's saying, then the guy's got to screw loose. Because Detroit is an ascending team.
There's no way he believes what he's saying.
But you're going to tell me a team led by Jared Goff is a better team than a team led by Jalen Hurts. Look, you got to screw loose in your head.
Phil, it's like when Tyreek Hill said that Tua Tagovailoa is the most accurate quarterback he's ever played with.
To an extent, when you join a new team and you got a lot of, I'm not saying he's a big signing because it wasn't like he signed like a 4-year, $70 million deal. It wasn't like they invested their whole offseason in him, Detroit. But when you're a big personality, the fan base expects you. And he's being brought in there to play football. But also, he's trying to build his brand. His brand has taken a hit, obviously, because of the way this whole thing, unfolded. And I talked to a supporter of the show privately a lot offline, and he's talked about it with me privately a lot, that this team secretly over the last year or so has a lot of big egos and a lot of divas, offensively and defensively. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson being one of them. And we don't need another 2017, 2018, 19 diva drama, Alshon Jeffrey, this guy, that guy kind of situation. So almost, if this is who Chauncey Gardner-Johnson really is, we're better off moving on. Then at this point now, because of what we've seen, I'd rather the Bradbury-Slay combo than Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and anybody else, because at least it's one less diva that could cause, problems in the locker room. You kept your leaders and you lost the loose cannon.
Right. I will say the Eagles clearly value corner more than safety, and they should. And I wanted CJ Gardner-Johnson back above anybody. And that's why this conversation is so crazy to me. I'll come to his defense for 1 second. The one thing that you just brought up, the diva conversation, and all these reporters are now coming out and saying what he was in the locker room. And listen, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. I don't like the timing of it. That's the one part where his tweet holds weight to me, because a bunch of the same reporters were banging on the same door that I was to bring him back. And there was never a single bad report about the dude throughout the season. And all you heard was how close this locker room was. Now he's gone. It's a good thing he's a diva. I'm not saying it's not true. And we know he had a big personality coming into Philadelphia. I don't love the timing of those tweets, but you are right. If that is his personality, then yeah, the Eagles dodged the bullet and they signed the right guys in Slay and Bradbury back.
I forget who it was, brought up a whole thread on Twitter of, maybe this is why the Saints were so easily willing to move on for him. For what did we give away? A 5th, 6th round pick last year?
Right.
For him? Maybe this is part of the reasoning. Like, we won that trade. I'll give away a 5th round pick every year for a guy that's going to start and help carry us to a Super Bowl. No, I'll do that. We have 5 5th round picks next year. Trade all 5 of them for 5 players right now. I don't care. But another team like the Saints might have done that so easily. Like, we thought Howie just hosed, the Saints front office.
Right.
The Saints might have seen this and been like, look, this guy's really good on the field, but he's a problem off the field. Let's count our eggs now. We're a rebuilding team. Let's move on from him. So maybe it wasn't as clear-cut Howie dominating the Saints in that trade.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And probably, like you said, the Eagles make that move regardless of the personality because they're trying to buy in for a Super Bowl, which they got to. The Saints, Taysom Hill, Jameis Winston, whoever your quarterback is last year, Phil's dying on the other end over here. The Saints knew they weren't making no Super Bowl or NFC Championship run, so they were okay with the draft pick and parting ways with the big personality to move their organization forward. I'll say, listen, Detroit's getting a hell of a player. Detroit has had a hell of an offseason. They're coming off a better season, almost made the playoffs. They're probably going to make the playoffs this year in a weak NFC. So he definitely helps their defense. We have seen James Bradbury almost walk out the door quietly. We've seen Darius Slay semi-request a trade because he couldn't restructure. And this is the craziest story of the offseason somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so that's enough. I mean, I've spent so much time talking Chauncey Gardner-Johnson on the show. It's literally making me choke on my coffee right now. I'm so tired of it. But the other thing that happened in the last 24 hours was Zach Pascal went to Arizona.
Yeah.
What's these Eagles going to stay with Jonathan Gannon? I mean, maybe Jonathan Gannon wasn't as hated as people thought, in that locker room. Zach Pascal, he got a 2-year deal to go to Arizona, whatever. It's not a big deal. But what the big deal is that we already thought we had to upgrade the Quez Watkins situation. Now you lose your wide receiver 4. What do you have, like 12 catches on the year, 14 catches on the year? Right. He had less than 1 catch per game on the year. Great blocking wide receiver, special teams. Great special teams player on that really awful.
We love those guys.
Yeah, I love those guys. But it now shows that along with safety, is it scary to say that wide receiver might be one of our biggest areas of needs at this point? And I've been saying it since day one, that Howie is not going to draft a cornerback at 10. Okay? He drafts interior linemen, offense and defense, and wide receivers in the first round. What do you want the Eagles to do with that 3rd wide receiver spot? Would you rather, A, go out and find a veteran slot corner that could slide right in there, drop Quez Watkins back to 4, or do you see a first round? I mean, I don't think they're going to draft at number 10. I think they're trading back. Another first round wide receiver? Is it a possibility? I kind of feel like it might be a strong possibility than it was 2 days ago.
I'm always down for the sexy pick, Howie. It might not be the smartest football move in the room. I know analytic nerds and all. If they went out and drafted a top tier wide receiver and he slotted in between AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, you have to be excited, right? They are going to go out and get a veteran guy. And to your point, no, it is not crazy to say that this is a big need because, Phil, it was a big need in the Super Bowl. It was a clear weakness in the Super Bowl, especially with Quez's drop. So
how many games with Jalen Hurts as quarterback, how many games do we lose this year?
What'd you say?
How many games while Jalen Hurts was our quarterback did we lose this year?
2? Yeah.
Washington?
Right.
We made a big mistake.
Quez fumble.
And Super Bowl. Quiz
Yeah.
drop. So our 2 losses with Jalen Hurts directly linked with Quez Watkins.
Yeah, I will say, though, I'm glad because you lose Pascal and we knew we wanted to upgrade over Quez. It's not like you need to upgrade 2 wide receiver positions. The good news is instead of losing a 3 and you have a 4, you really had 2 4s on your roster last year in Pascal and Watkins. So you bring in that true 3, Quest slots to 4. So you only need to find one guy, but you'd better find that guy this offseason.
I mean, because when I put this out there on Twitter a few times over the last couple of weeks about drafting a wide receiver in the first round, maybe the second round, whatever. Because again, I'll preface this. I don't think we pick at 10 and 30. I think we pick at 15, 18, and then an extra early second round pick. I think both picks get adjusted slightly. That's just how I see it playing out. Whether you get an early second round wide receiver or you get a middle of the first round wide receiver, I still think that's a strong possibility. But I just see Howie. We've got all these picks this year, and we literally have 12 picks in the draft next year at this point with all the comp picks. There's no way Howie's not going to be maneuvering and wheeling and dealing and upgrading this wide receiver position. And I just look at the first round wide receiver. We signed A.J. Brown to a 4-year extension. You draft a guy in the first round, you got him for 4 years plus the 5th-year option. His 3 years is the number 3 guy. Then all of a sudden, A.J. Brown moves on because he's old in free agency. You've got your next guy right next to Devontae Smith. Yeah, now you got to pay 2 guys, that rookie and Devontae Smith. But I kind of feel like it's not as crazy and outlandish of a move as you kind of like. It's a fun move, but it's not crazy as you think.
No, and do you know why? I literally had this draft conversation with my uncle over the weekend. Where are they going to go, Phil? And what makes the most sense early on in the draft? Because you need that impact player, right? Listen, I know we love Cam Jurgens and we love Landon Dickerson when they made the, now, but not really when they made the pick. We love Jordan Davis, but he was basically a rotation backup. You are in a win now. Clearly, you just made the Super Bowl, the 1 seed in the NFC. You need impact players. So where are they going to go, right? Defensive line, maybe, because you lost some depth there, but you need
How do you feel about Jalen Carter there?
Oh, I mean, I would love. Obviously, I know
would you take that chance even after the off the field issues and the combine issues last week?
I know we just said maybe we dodged a bullet with a personality in the locker room. I'm probably rolling the dice on the kid.
I'm curious where it's going to be like my thing now. Everybody that comes on here, I'm going to ask till the draft.
Yeah,
where are your thoughts on Jalen Carter?
And it is interesting you bring up moving from 10.
Huge reward right there.
Yeah, because here's the thing. Before probably 2-3 weeks ago, we probably had no chance at Jalen Carter slipping to 10. You could possibly now. We'll see. My point is, outside of a guy like him, right, a dominant, a big guy on the defensive line, you're not like you can't go offensive line. You cannot do it. I don't need a backup offensive lineman. You're not going quarterback. You're not going. They're not going to take running back early. You don't need a corner now early. You know how he's not going linebacker early. He's not going to go safety early. He never has. So you're very limited in areas how he's probably going to go. What's that leave, Phil? Oh, you're not going tight end, obviously. What's that leave? Wide receiver. Yeah. So I'm not saying he does it, but you're talking D-line, outside the box safety pick, or X.
Yeah, the argument against it is because the argument that I keep being told on Twitter is that we've already got Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, and Jalen Hurts. We don't need any more weapons. But you do need more weapons.
Yeah, I hate that argument. You can never have enough.
You can never have enough weapons. Never. And I think what you said, you named all the positions. What, you don't want Bijan Robinson at 10? Come on now. He's mocking Bijan Robinson at 10. Come on.
I said that before they signed Penny. At 30, hell. At 30, he should be there. Or right around there. And I was like, man, I would love Bijan Robinson at 30. And then they signed Penny. I'm like, it probably wasn't going to happen anyway. And it's not going to happen now. But, dude, that's the thing. Like, people, okay, yeah, we don't need it.
He did sign with Jalen Hurts' agent.
I did.
And he was in Philly yesterday.
Yeah. That's
because
the thing.
Every time somebody shares a picture of the Philly skyline, it must mean they're signing in Philly.
Well, Nick Castellanos did it, so we never know. But,
that's true.
We might not necessarily need it, but that would be fun. That would be a lot of fun in this offense. So no, it's interesting. You realistically have about 3 positions that Howie could go in the first round, and one of them safety, which he historically does not do. So you're down to D-line. That makes sense. And
wide receiver,
which he has a history of doing.
So we keep talking about this safety thing, and you just hinted at another position there. So obviously you got safety, you got Evans that they just picked up. You got Reed Blankenship. You got Kayvon Wallace, and that's it. It's obviously a huge area of concern. Do you want them to go out and get a veteran guy, or do you want Howie to break the tradition? And you got the guy Branch from Alabama. You don't draft him at 10. Maybe you trade back and get him at like 15 or 18 or 20 or something like that. Do you go out and get the guy like from Tennessee? Do you bring in Jalen Mills? Everybody wants the Green Goblin back. I don't. I want nothing to do with the Green Goblin.
Yeah,
we don't need one diva out of the locker room and another one in. We don't need it. But that doesn't solve the problem at linebacker. Like, everybody keeps focusing in on the loss of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. What are we going to do at safety? We still have literally our starting linebackers right now are Nakobe Dean and Davian Taylor.
Yeah, no. Sean
Bradley.
It's
that's
definitely
a bigger problem than I'd rather start with Kayvon Wallace and Reed Blankenship and find a linebacker than have and not have Sean Taylor out there starting. That's bad.
That's a tough question. I'm going to slightly disagree with you because I have a lot of faith in Nakobe Dean. I want no parts of Reed Blankenship and Kayvon Wallace starting at safety.
I know.
Listen, there is the dude from Tennessee that was just released. Kevin Byard. Obviously AJ
Was
Brown.
he released officially?
I'm pretty sure he was released. Yeah.
Yesterday he wasn't released yet. Yesterday, the last I looked. That's why I was there.
Let me just check real quick.
Yeah, I'm just paging through Twitter right now to see, but I don't know. Either way, if he isn't released, he's going to be released at some point.
Declines pay cut.
I don't think it's
all right, maybe he's not gone yet. I thought I saw something that he was gone. But regardless, he's supposed to be gone from Tennessee.
Yeah. Hey, I'll call Tennessee right now and offer one of those 5 fifth-round draft picks for him.
Absolutely.
Why not? Absolutely.
I did see, like, someone tweeted, like, they quote tweeted the Byard being released thing. And they added AJ Brown and was like, yo, are you recruiting? And I didn't love his answer, to be honest. He goes, nah, that's above my pay grade or whatever. I'm like, oh, bro.
We talk about divas. You got one right there.
Yeah, I know.
Brown. Yeah. That's going to be a problem at some point. I'm just going to say that. I'm going to drop that little nugget here. The AJ Brown diva is going to be a problem at some point in his 4-year career with the Philadelphia Eagles. Just going to say.
I'm not going to disagree with you.
It's an unpopular opinion,
but I want to disagree with you. I hope you're wrong.
Yeah, I hope I'm wrong too, but it is what it is. See, I think the Eagles need to go all in on fixing this safety thing over linebacker because there are viable veteran names. You got the Miles Jack, you got the Wagners of the world. You got guys.
Bobby Wagner would be incredible here.
If you can get him on a 1-year cheap deal, that's equivalent to what we did with Bradbury and Steve Nelson the last couple of years at cornerback. It's a great patchwork.
Well, especially for
4th round, 3rd round.
Especially for what he just did last year, right? Like, Bobby Wagner signed with the LA Rams. Why? Probably thinking they had a chance to make another Super Bowl run, right? So clearly he wants another ring. Mm-hmm. You're looking around the NFC. It's not a bad place to be right now to make that ring chase.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, there's more news breaking last night. Rumors that we're this close to figuring out what's going to happen with Jalen Hurts' contract situation. Do you think they're just rumors floating around that the talk has begun, that the framework is being worked on? Do you think Howie has been plotting this whole offseason, making moves and letting certain guys – he works cat magic all the time, but he's been making moves and a lot of simpler, smaller deals because he's got that looming over his head, right? That's got to be part of his thought process this whole time.
Yeah.
Gotta be, right?
Yeah.
The thing is, I don't think Howie understands yet. Like, he knows he's going to pay him a big bag of money, and he's going to try to make it as cheap as possible. But he's like, this is like a totally different situation than the Carson Wentz extension because everybody's on board with Jalen Hurts. So he can't. He doesn't have as much negotiating, leverage in this contract. So he's kind of like, shit, I really do got to pay him a lot of money. I don't know what's going to happen here. Is it going to be 400? Is it going to be 500? What is it going to be? I really can't make too many big moves because I don't know what this Hurts deal is going to look like.
No, that's a great point. You would have to figure he gets that extension this summer, right?
It's going to be done before training camp, in my mind.
Yeah. So, it is a great point, which is why you're not going to see the rest of the roster shape out until that's probably done.
Exactly, and that's kind of where I'm at. I just hope you don't lose out on any specific players,
right?
until then because of, the Hurts thing.
Well,
All
don't
right, real
forget
quick.
Howie's favorite period is those training camp cuts, man.
Absolutely. Well, post June 1st cuts and
Yeah.
training camp cuts and trade. Look, again, I'll say it. We will not have 12 draft picks next year by the start of this year's season. Out of those 12 picks, at least 3 or 4 of them will be traded this year, this offseason before the season starts. There's zero doubt in my mind that those picks, whether they're used to move up in this year's draft, get back into this draft, whatever it may be, or for players, there's just no way he's going to take 12 draft picks into the next offseason.
Not a
It's
shot.
not going to happen. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. All right, real quick. Tonight, World Baseball Classic Finals.
USA.
USA versus who? Japan?
Japan.
We beat them in WW2. We're going to beat them again tonight. Sorry, was that a little over the line right there? That just kind of popped into my head right there.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Quote, clip that one out right there. Pull that one out. Anyway, I was harsh at the start and before the World Baseball Classic started. Talking about the World Baseball Classic, how I wasn't into it, how I didn't want JT Realmuto getting hurt. I didn't want Trey Turner playing and risking anything and our pitchers pitching for these other teams. Now, we've basically dodged bullets across the board. Ranger isn't as hurt as he could be. JT didn't hurt himself when he got hit by a pitch. But I kind of gotten excited and pumped up for this finals tonight. And it's like I've been watching some of the last couple games, and it's playoff atmosphere baseball.
Yeah.
In what are we in? What is it? March? I mean, it's getting me more hyped up for the start of the baseball season than typically, because every night, every city, wherever they're playing a game, whether you're watching Venezuela versus Puerto Rico or Japan versus whoever, it's a playoff atmosphere every single night. And I understand why the rest of the world gets super excited for these kind of events.
Well, and you have to look at it. Obviously, like there's all these other leagues that they have overseas, especially in Japan, who obviously Shohei Ohtani and Yu Darvish are going against us tonight. And but this is huge for them, right? This is the world stage for them. Whereas we're sitting here as selfish Phillies fans, praying and hoping that they just get out alive and can come play on opening day, right? So it's bigger for them probably than us. But no, it is extremely cool and fun to watch right now. I have not caught a bunch of it. I'll be tuned in tonight.
Trey frickin' Turner.
Oh, that's what I was going to say.
We're getting every. I just hope he's saving some of that for the regular season and the playoffs.
Did you see what he said as well? He said it's funny because he hasn't hit a home run in spring training in the last 3+ years or whatever, and now here he is with 3 of them in 24 hours, in the World Baseball Classic. But
see, tonight's game against Japan is kind of like why I was not hyped at first. Because you got somebody like Shohei Ohtani, or however you say his first name. Shohei Ohtani just started for Japan the other night. And he is going to put himself on the line as a relief. Yeah. He said, if they need me in relief, I am going to pitch, because he's got that national pride. Well, you think the Angels organization is sitting there right now, not sweating their hands and freaking out that their best player, yes, he's their best player. Sorry, Mike Trout. Ohtani is the best player on the Angels. Just pitched, has a history of injuries, and he's going to pitch on 2 days rest again tonight. That's
I wouldn't love it.
I mean, you would, but as an Angels fan, I'm not an Angels fan, but if I was,
oh no, I said I wouldn't love it.
Oh, okay, I thought you said you do love it.
Oh no, I don't.
Why I hated it to begin with.
Oh no, I'm listen. I'm with you. I don't know if you follow any of the guys over at Barstool or KFC Barstool. Kevin Clancy put out a video. He's a Mets fan. Edwin Diaz, obviously, major injury. And he made a video freaking out about it, and calling it pointless and meaningless and blah, blah. And
everybody crushed him for it.
He got shredded for it. Yeah. Now, I will say, he's it's not meaningless and it's not pointless. And you see the streaming numbers and you see the TV numbers and the attendance and the crowd and all that stuff. And it's a great atmosphere. However, I would be just as upset if Trey Turner.
Well, you were obviously not watching the other night when JT Realmuto gets hit in the hand with a pitch. I mean, Jose Altuve broke his hand.
Yeah,
a couple games ago.
I would be just as upset as a Phillies fan.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm excited. I mean, the ratings on Saturday night for the semifinal game for Team USA were, I think, higher, they said, than any World Series game this past year.
It's crazy.
So people are tuning in for it. There's that national pride. Kyle was saying that, on the show the other day, that it's the other countries and the other nationalities that are bringing the ratings and not USA. It's not like me and you are watching
Right.
all
Could
90
be.
every
Probably
game.
is.
And it's probably accurate. And he said you could hear more boos for Team USA in a U.S. stadium than cheers for them. And that's fine because other countries have more national pride, for their sports and their athletics. But, man, I'm pumped for it. But, again, every time I see a Philly out there tonight, I'm going to be on the edge of my seat hoping they do something good, but also don't hurt themselves.
Yeah.
Don't stretch that double to a triple.
And listen,
not get hit by a pitch.
I get the counter argument that it could happen in spring training. Hell,
I'd rather happen in spring training working for my team than
no. It could happen when we can get to the finish line and get to opening day and someone gets hit on the hand in the first inning of opening day. I get it. It can happen at any time, anywhere. It sucks when it's something else. It's like if Joel Embiid was playing pickup with all those dudes in the summer and tore his ACL in the summer, right? That would suck.
Yeah, it would. It is what it is. But I just wanted to bring it up today on the show because it's fun. It's fun to watch playoff atmosphere baseball in March instead of another meaningless spring training.
Good reminder of where we'll be in a few short months.
Absolutely. Few? It's like 6 months away.
Yeah, no.
It's a long season, my man. We're going to wrap up Trending in the AM right there, TSM Media. I am your host, Phil Stivel. This is Dylan Davis. Make sure you go back and hit the like and the subscribe and follow on all social media platforms. And make sure you do us that favor. Head over to the YouTube page, most specifically, and subscribe there. We'll be back tomorrow morning. We'll probably talk World Baseball Classic. I got Jason joining me, so we'll try to talk some baseball. I had some interesting poll questions and different things going on that I want to tackle Phillies-wise. Because, honestly, we got World Baseball Classic Finals tonight. And, Dylan, what is it, 8 days till opening day? 7?
Yeah.
7, 8 days? I can't do the math there. Yeah, I mean, baseball's right around the corner. So we're going to start some Phillies talk on the agenda tomorrow, plus whatever else happens on Twitter with the Eagles, because there will always be something happening with the Eagles. Everybody have a great day. Again, Phil Stiefel, Dylan Davis, DSM Media. We'll talk to you tomorrow.